Why is Intimidation a charisma skill? I'm playing a 7-foot tall, half-orc barbarian with muscles out the yahoo. I've got an enchanted axe with the blood of 1,000,000 goblins embedded in the grain of its wooden handle. And I can't convince a town guard that he's about to get his cheeks clapped in a major and uncomfortable way? This is stupid. D&D is stupid. Heyo, John here. And this is Stupid Tabletop, presented by Maloreth's Weapon. In this segment, we're going to look at things that may not make sense to people who play tabletop RPGs. Our topic is D&D skills and why some of them are based on ability scores that may not always make sense to the logic of a player. One that bothered me playing a druid was the nature skill, being tied to intelligence rather than wisdom. The explanation for this is actually simple though, and based mostly in the game design and balance of D&D, rather than some overarching principle. You don't necessarily want to monopolize something like being outside to a particular class, and putting a little nature in a mental ability scores realm opens up things for classes other than druids or clerics to have knowledge of the outside world. Say, the possibility of a wizard to know that a region contains a particular flower he'd need for a spell component. Also, they may be able to make a check to hint at traits of certain natural enemies, depending on your DM, to allow usage in combat. Another skill that seems questionably linked to an ability is medicine, which as you may know is a wisdom-based skill. Why though? Aren't doctors smart? Don't doctors have big brain and IQ over 9,000? Well, yes, doctors are usually fairly intelligent. It takes a certain amount of mental prowess to make it through the 10 to 14 years of schooling required to become a doctor. Your cleric probably didn't go to Johns Hopkins or Harvard. They probably combined the teachings of clergy mentors, personal research, and did their own experimentation to experience in trial and error. Maybe your druid was instructed by another local medicine man. Maybe your paladin had a vision from God, but it's on the healer to actually apply the knowledge. In any case, the classes linked to healing are often wisdom-based, so it does make sense that a healing-adjacent skill would utilize the ability most often prioritized by healers. Let's think about the discovery of penicillin. Fleming, or an associate, neglected to cover a petri dish with bacteria samples and found it invaded by penicillin mold. He didn't throw it out and write it off as a ruined sample. He had the wisdom to recognize that the clear ring around the mold unclouded by bacteria meant something. Robert Malone recognized in 1987 that mRNA could be used in the body to turn RNA itself into a drug, and it took 30 years of work before that knowledge could be utilized. We had to gain the wisdom of how to safely use it as medicine. Intelligence is a bit of an underloved stat at times in 5e anyhow, compared to previous editions which awarded skill points on level up at a rate dependent on the character's intelligence stat. Sometimes the game designers have to throw a bone this way or that to avoid players feeling underwhelmed when not in the particular niche the character is put into by class or background. A generous DM may let you do things that don't fall into the realm of the skill in question, but are reasonably close. An example of this could be using the nature skill to make a roll to discern what kind of conditions a beast would have from the Parlaying with Monsters table in Tasha's. It could be argued a number of ways, but my sensibilities tell me that someone may know a tiger won't eat a carrot with a check from animal handling, survival, or nature, and that allows a little more action to be spread around the group. No one wants to spend 3 sessions in an enchanted forest watching the ranger roll everything. It's nice when everyone can get in on the action. Getting back to the initial query now, why is charisma relevant to intimidation? Anyone would rather fight the scrawny bard from The Witcher than Henry Cavill in Geralt's boots, right? Well, yeah. But if this was a D&D setting, a 7-foot half-orc barbarian with intelligence over 0 would more than likely pick Geralt. Come here, //fighty man. Bard sing me sleepy, me want fight. To skill, steal shiny sword. An overly muscular character is likely not going to phase another overly muscular character, whereas a martial character likely knows that it's going to have some troubles fighting a magic wielder. Whether that magic is being used to damage the opponent or buff the user doesn't matter. A person who lives by the sword is probably more comfortable putting that to the test against another sword and wouldn't have to roll big to surmise that he can't cut a fireball into irrelevance. To use a more modern analogy, If I were somehow transported back to the 70s and at a bar filled with the preeminent bodybuilders of the time, let's say for instance Lou Ferrigno and Arnold Schwarzenegger, I may be able to witness the 3-inch shorter, 30 to 40 pound lighter Arnold absolutely getting under the larger man's skin. How though? Bigger is better, and Lou Ferrigno played the Incredible Hulk. They didn't use computers to make him bigger, that wasn't an option back then. They just painted his giant body green and told him to make faces and roar. How the heck did Arnie just walk up to a larger, more muscular Ferrigno, one that even resembled one of the most powerful monsters in comic book superhero history with just a little Halloween paint, and proceed to live rent-free in his head for years? The answer is charisma. The quick definition of charisma in a D&D frame is force of personality. Generally, when we think of charisma in real life, we think about movie stars or politicians. Looks are often factored into charisma for NPCs, as you can see anytime you check the charisma of an undead creature. If the thing is pretty or ugly, it draws your eye. Psychologically, the initial encounter with a person generally opens your mental file on them, and the first thing seeing people will put in is the other person's picture. Sometimes the first entry will be a whole video. A capable, confident person swaggers into frame with the loping gait of a lone wolf, introduces himself nonchalantly with a carefree smile, and never breaks eye contact. That doesn't mean the person who shuffles to you and stares at the floor while they talk isn't equally as formidable, but they would have to establish that in your mind at some other point in time. Without knowing either person or their skill set well, and regardless of the size or musculature of either, you'd probably rather be accompanied by the former than the latter if you were venturing into a tavern basement to kill rats. A barkeep working near the entrance to the Underdark is likely to see all kinds, and also probably knows that fighter with 27-inch biceps had to commission an artificer to make a contraption just because he wasn't flexible enough to wipe his own rumpus. Meanwhile, a bard singing gaudy songs of their last night's conquest in the dungeon or the bed is likely to have a crowd, and the aura of raw cosmic power ebbing from the vessel you may know as a sorcerer in the corner is sure to encourage the other patrons to give them a wide berth. The warlock and paladin are immediately identifiable to anyone looking for help with various deities, and instantly respected for their talent in persuading the major forces of light and darkness to their needs and whims. In conclusion, there are sometimes sacrifices in logic to be made when designing games for the sake of player satisfaction and overall game playability. Underutilized abilities may be given a usage through mental acrobatics. An ability may have a case for being used for a skill, but a different ability is chosen because it's a closer match or more linked to the classes that will probably use it. Other times, we as people may find the reasoning harder to believe because of our own personal bias. That's all for this episode. Feel free to check out our other videos, roll a critical on that like button if we've earned it, or join our backstory by clicking subscribe. If you have any questions, suggestions, or criticisms, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Thank you for watching.